Welcome to Green and Gold FC. I'm joined by Strati Xynas, who's the general manager of South Melbourne Football Club, ahead of the inaugural launch of the OFC Pro League. So how are you going, Strati?
Thank you. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me on. And we're busy. Like it's busy, but it's an exciting time for football in Australia.
So first of all, congratulations on winning the first ever Australian Championship. It's been a year of firsts for new competitions for Souths. Can you tell us about what effort you put into just bringing the fans back and preparing for the tournament and ultimately being successful?
Well, it's a massive process in the sense that to come from an NPL environment and to elevate the football club to the Australian Championship level. I mean, obviously we'd been there before, we'd seen that landscape before, and it was almost as if we were meant to be. The expertise we got in the football club never left, and it was a really positive sort of environment to start to build on. And I think our supporters realised it, and I think that everyone was ready for it. Our supporters craved for big games, and even with the Australian Cup, for example, our supporters came out in droves to watch big games, and that's what our supporters want.
So South Melbourne have been instrumental behind the scenes, at least people associated with South Melbourne, in pushing us to have this championship in the first place, and secondly, in pushing for home and away. Is that still going? Is there like some hope in the future that we have a home and away to go on top of the Australian Championship in the near future rather than 20, 30 years down the track?
Look, the momentum's been, amazing. I think we've all been pleasantly surprised of what it's attracted and the public's imagination, and keeping that momentum going is really, really important. And it's created a lot of social change in the sense that clubs that want to be aspirational have really got a platform to really build on, and that's the exciting part about football.
So we're about to start the OFC Pro League, and it is a big unknown to all us fans out there. It's a little bit like watching Australia in the first ever time that we played in the AFC Champions League. What sort of standard are we expecting?
I've been pleasantly surprised working through the Oceania area with FIFA workshops, and FIFA really putting in a lot of work into bringing everyone up to speed and the standards. And the Pacific nations have been unbelievable. We're learning off each other. We're actually bouncing off each other in how we create this momentum. And FIFA are doing an amazing job. The IFC are doing an amazing job, and it's actually all about a collective working together.
Can you give us some more detail about some of the things South Melbourne have learned and implemented in this process?
It's actually the best thing that's probably implemented is that we're a big club, and we're very, very well respected within the Oceania region. And everywhere we've gone, we've been introduced as Oceania Club of the Century, and that's a big accolade for us. We've been there before, and I think in other videos I've actually said that it feels like home. This feels like we're going back a long time, but at the same time, we're actually being really progressive and we're moving the game forward.
So, how is South Melbourne going about promoting this? Do you know a gauge of interest in fans, or is it just we wait till the weekend and find out how many turn up?
Um, we've been really, really active with the state government, the federal governments. We're looking forward to their support. We've had functions with both state government and federal government at functions where they're getting behind us, and I think that it's a lot to do with sport diplomacy. And football's one of those great games that actually can affect everyone altogether, and it's brought in a lot of different aspects. For us, from a marketing side, it's brought in some international sponsors that want to spread their word across, the whole Oceania region. And look, I'm excited. I'm pleasantly, excited.
Speaking of sports diplomacy, I know that there has been a lot more interest in diplomatic relations with the Oceania region recently, particularly since the rise of China. I don't want to say anything too insensitive, uh, but can you tell us more about what role South Melbourne in the OFC has to do with diplomacy in that region, and what steps the governors made
So
for interest?
originally, I approached the federal government to give us a blueprint on their sports diplomacy program, and there's a great document called the 2030 Sports Diplomacy um, Vision for sport in Australia, and football fits it really, really well because it's a global sort of language in the sense that it'll bring a big positive social change. Not only that, but it also affect tourism. It'll affect the cultural connections to the whole of Oceania. So it's about revisiting spaces where we've missed for a while and we haven't focused on, but football can reignite that connection to Oceania again.
So one thing which has been a talking point from a lot of clubs during the championship is that this makes a season really, really long. Now, I'm in England where down in the eighth division, clubs are still doing 40 games a year.
Yeah,
I might be influenced by that perspective, but I do acknowledge that this is quite a shock to the system. So not only do South have an extra 6 games a year during the championship and 3 extra finals, you guys now have an extra minimum of 17 games in the OFC. How are you managing that as a semi-pro club?
I mean that's probably the best question in the sense that we've got to understand about what platforms we work on and how we prioritize our vision. And our vision is prioritized obviously with the OFC, Australian Championship, NPL, and all that stuff. But what we've got to do now is underpin it by our youth development program in the near future, that we have to make sure that we get everything right. And we're not going to say to ourselves that we're going to leave one part and not look after the other. We're actually going to be staying focused on looking after everything.
So speaking of youth development, one thing that excites me, apart from seeing an Australian club on an international stage, is the possibility of producing extra Socceroos and extra players overseas. South Melbourne, when I look at it, you guys now have minimum of 6 games in the championship every single year, possibly more when we get home and away,
More.
plus 17 games in the OFC. That's 23 games above the NPL level. That's nearly a full A-League season, right? Just 3 short. Then when you added finals, you could easily have more. So can the NSC and OFC combined provide enough games above the NPL level to start making cash in the transfer market and start producing players in Asia, Europe, North America, and ultimately the Socceroos?
I mean, that's a vision we want, and I think that for us to build a proper platform that's going to sustain our vision, it starts from when our younger players come in when they're 14, 15, 16, and we've got a proper pathway where we've got a vision, and you will be pleasantly surprised, even in this OFC, where some of our young kids have gone through our ranks and will be playing in the OFC. So these are the things that we need. We need these stories. We need these platforms to be able to give, these players the opportunity to move into a professional league.
So one thing which was challenging us all from scouts during the championship was that the l- the lineups were often not produced before kickoff, and when you had lineups, often the birth years weren't or birth dates weren't provided, so scouts didn't know. International scouts didn't know how old some of these players were. Will the OFC Pro League have information so that people can track
Oh,
young players?
well, all I can tell you, the last few months, governance has been a massive part of this league. It's been ticking all the boxes. The professionalism has been amazing. It's been such a great opportunity to work with professionals who are running a pro league and setting the standards and aligning every club. to be on the same sort of level. I've been absolutely amazed, and I've learned so much learning from our closest neighbours.
So, are there any youth that you have an eye on? Of course, understand that maybe you don't want to put too much pressure, but for us fans, we're very excited to know, is there any new name which you're hoping will be on everyone's lips by the end of the tournament?
Look, it's early days yet, and I think that we'll probably see later on in the year come into the final stages of the tournament in May. That's what we're looking at. We're looking to just gently move into these spaces and introduce players into, younger players into full-time football and adult football, really, because these kids have been playing in amongst their age groups. And I'm a big advocate of introducing younger players into professional environments at a younger age.
So, you mentioned that there's been some changes because of the OFC to your youth development. Could you go into any details about what some of those changes have been?
The changes start becoming, we end up becoming a bit of a destinational football club where we starting to attract, better players, understanding that there's different pathways for footballers and different development for players. Not only, I'm not saying the A League's not the only way, but we at the moment are showing a completely different platform where you only have to be, and the Australian Championship actually has actually shown us a better way in the sense that you only need to play 4 or 5 great games. And Manny Agwek, one of our footballers, has signed a pro contract with a Thai club. So, we're getting the exposure, we're getting the branding, and I think that we're becoming quite a powerful sort of player in the football market in not only Asia but Oceania now.
So hopefully we can start seeing some future Socceroos already in this OFC Pro League.
Look,
Um,
I'm excited by it. I really am. I think that we're building a football program from the bottom up, and I think that the environment we're creating is a learning environment and a safe environment for our footballers to keep learning and being part of an historical football club, mate.
so one other really exciting facet is this expanded Club World Cup. Definitely a John the Baptist preacher for the Club World Cup. I absolutely love the new format. I really hope Australian clubs could come, and the prize money is incredible. But at least as of now, South Melbourne do not have a pathway. Is there any flexibility? Is there any way that these rules could change and this could become a pathway to see an Aussie club there?
I mean, look, it's a great question. I think that it's between the Asian Football Confederation and the OFC to understand that our game in this part of the world should cross over. I'm a big advocate of an Auckland team, for example, being able to play in Asia, and an Australian team like South Melbourne being able to represent, Oceania in the World Club Championship. And these are the conversations we will have. And what I've understood in the last couple of months that we've had a lot of FIFA workshops is that everyone is willing to listen and everyone's willing to say, well, these are the issues we've got and how can we deal with them? So, I'm excited by it.
So it's definitely not a no. So there could be,
I don't
if
know.
yeah, if A League, New Zealand A League clubs can play in the Asian Champions League, then maybe the vice versa can happen. So that's really big fingers crossed because I'd love to see us there. I don't want to have the same pain we went through with the national team World Cup where we spent many
Yeah, I think
years. Love
you're right.
love
I
that.
think geographically we're all in the same region, and
Yeah.
if we're going to progress the game in our area, our region, we really have to work together. And I think we're starting to get that synergy. I think the OFC will be a complete revelation.
That's fantastic. So historically, there's been a lot of interest in South Melbourne applying for the A League. Is that interest dead, or is there still open doors, especially if the license fees drop? Would that be something that South Melbourne would be interested in?
I mean, there's no doubt about it, and we would always love to play in the highest league in Australia, and we've been fortunate enough to have other platforms with the Australian Championship and the OFC. and I think it's one of those things that we have to keep the conversation on the table. We will never, ever say we're never going to be there because, that's where you want to be. You want to be playing in the highest league in your own country. But, how exciting would it be to be able to represent, your team in the A-League, you're in the OFC, and you're talking about working year round? Well, I'm up for it, mate.
That's going to be very tempting to palm this question off with, we'll cross that bridge if we come to it. But
Here we go.
if you do get in the A-League, would you still play in the OFC Pro League?
I like it. Yeah. Can I tell you something? I'm
Yeah.
in love with working, in different spaces, and I'm sure we should be able to accommodate different things. And I think Auckland FC are doing it now as we speak. So they're in the A-League and they're playing in the OFC. So that's a big yes.
Fantastic. Thanks for not hedging. So final question. Who do you think's going to win the OFC Pro League? And you're not allowed to be biased.
Look, I've seen all the teams and I've seen the great managers and I've seen the amount of work that everyone's putting into. I take my hat off to everyone. Every single club is going to be hard to beat, especially when you come into environments where we have to go to Port Moresby, where we're playing a lot of games on one pitch. Pitch conditions could play a big factor. And the way the structure is being built, even up until we get to May, the bottom team could still win it. So we have to be on our guard all the time. But if you're going to ask me, I reckon we're going to come pretty close, mate.
Awesome. We'll be cheering you on, representing Australia. So good luck with that. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll also have some fans here to give their own opinion as well. So thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
Good luck this week.
Thank you. All the best. Thank you.
Okay, now we're joined by Paul Mavroudis. He's going to give us a fan view account of why about the OFC Pro League and what to look forward to, and maybe some of the fans' worries, some of the things that fans are excited about. He is a 20-year blogger and fan of South Melbourne. He's blogged the very heavily trafficked South of the Border blog. I recommend people have a look at it. It has some very interesting history of Australian football, and was also appeared in Joe Gorman's documentary, The Death and Life of Australian Soccer. How you going, Paul?
I'm good. It's very late here. This is way past my normal bedtime, so hopefully we'll stay alert for the rest of this discussion.
So will the time zones be a problem, actually? Speaking of which, when you get onto the OFC Pro League, do you know where the matches are and all that, and how are fans able to go to any of these matches?
I think the most realistic ones would be probably New Zealand, because it's still sort of during a summer holiday period. I can't see, even then, I can't see many people getting to the games in the other countries. I suspect we have one nutbag supporter who doesn't get to a lot of South games during the regular season because he's a Canterbury Rugby League fan. Hi, Emil, if you're listening. And he lives in Melbourne, but he gets to every Canterbury Bulldogs game that he can. That includes games in Perth. That includes games in New Zealand. He's probably going to go to Vegas this year if they let him in. But otherwise, I can't see a lot of South fans making the trek over to any of these things. And it's going to be very strange to be in that situation, because one of the few perks of being in this sort of exile period of outside the National League has been you can actually get to see South Melbourne every week if you choose. Sometimes you don't want to. Sometimes you don't want to go to some of these really terrible grounds, but you do get the chance, if you want to, go to see a South Melbourne game 26 to 30 times a year, easily. Whereas the Pro League is a complete opposite. We might get to see them 3 times.
So will there be lots of fans doing watch parties at home, or do you know what the interest is and alternative travel arrangements? Do you know if anyone's going to Fiji, or are there groups going to New Zealand?
No, I have not heard any such thing from anybody. I have not heard about watch parties. I assume most people are going to watch it on home. We're still not really actually quite sure nobody's really told us how we're actually supposed to watch this. We've been told about a FIFA Plus app or something that's going to be broadcast on that, but nothing's actually been really made clear to anybody, which I don't know. I'm not going to say I'd be concerned about us. I'm sure somebody at some point is going to say something. This is how you're supposed to watch this. It would be nice if the Pro League itself said, this is how you watch these games. I haven't seen anything yet. So, yeah, it's really hard to plan when no one's actually telling you what's actually happening.
Do you know what the interest is for the home games? So we have at least a few home games at South Melbourne, but I believe there's 5 hubs. So I think you guys get 3 home games?
Yeah, 3, but we don't actually know where they're going to be hosted because Lakeside will be possibly out of action during the scheduled time for that circuit, as they call it, for the Grand Prix. So that's up in the air too for fans. We're not being told a lot of things about this, and it starts in 6 days.
Yes.
So, yeah, there's still a lot of stuff that's very unknown to us. Broadcasters, where we're going to host our circuit, who's going to manage the team when they're having fixture clashes, which players are going to be playing in both, where's the emphasis going to be on the squads. It's concerning, the lack of information. You have to put your certain amount of trust into the board and the management of the club that they're doing the right thing, that they've got it under control, and that they've got the priorities straight. At the same time, as just a regular fan, and I'm not even really blogging that much. I'm not even trying to stir up anything like I might be accused of sometimes. It's just not much information been provided to anybody.
So the board has a fair bit of credit in the bank by how they seemed from the outside to handle the Australian Championship. The crowds at South Melbourne were exemplary, and they ended up winning the whole thing. Can you compare the build-up to the Championship and the OFC Pro League?
I think that there's a major difference, and that is the Championship was all of Australian soccer had at least one eye on it, at least some interest. It was our thing. We know how to relate to the other clubs, the other entities in the competition. So look, of course, you had a lot of familiar names. Your Olympics, your Sydney Uniteds, your Marconis, your Arpias. Even if none of these clubs are what they used to be 30 years ago, there's still some kind of baseline where you understand what they're like. It's a little different for your Metro Stars, your Moreton Cities, your Broadmeadows, because again, they never really have national presence, except occasionally fleecing like a Metro Stars in the NPL national playoffs. But you know how to relate to them on some Australian soccer level. I know nothing about almost any of these other entities that we're going to be playing against. And because this is basically a purely South Melbourne thing, I haven't seen much interest from anybody else, from any other Australian people, soccer fans, to do with this thing at all. And I guess partly that's also the chaos that's happening in the A-League as well, which is distracting a few people. Western United, Central Coast today, obviously, sort of ownership flux. But no, I haven't seen the same kind of, not even close to the same kind of interest. The media is not getting behind it in the same way. It helped the Australian Championship that you had, especially from a Victorian perspective, a lot of the young guys that have been doing NPL Victoria commentary and social media for a long time now, were at the forefront of doing media on SBS, for instance. They knew the players inside out. We almost know nothing about any of these players, any of these clubs, and most of the people that would do media for these countries just don't exist for the OFC. We don't interact with Oceania. At some level, we interact with what goes on in New South Wales or Queensland, especially as Victorians, because we just take all their players. but no, I just don't feel the same vibe. It's a lot of unknown, but also you just don't know who these people are.
So speaking of poaching from New South Wales, we do know some of your new players. You just poached Jordan Swibble, Ilya Shelemanov-Trenkova,
Mm-hmm.
Aaron Cox from Boardman Magic, Luko Kovany from VPL 1, Ishvir Singh from Auckland United, James Lackey is an under-23 player, and Shagor Beachmore. I'm not sure exactly where he comes from. So
He was a youth player. He played youth for South Melbourne. He came off the bench in our last home and away game, 2025.
So are there any players in there which you are looking forward to seeing and you think, oh, this player could really strengthen our squad?
It's really tricky. I think Swibel is the one that a lot of is going to be expected of. Looks like he had a really good season 2 years ago. Sorry, back in 2023, and he's sort of been up and down since. I think Swibel, because I think defensively we're fairly sound. Midfield, you've got Yiannakopoulos and Pasquale in there as your holding midfield, your rocks. But I think up front is the issue, because obviously you had Manny Aguirre, you had Ollie Laval, and they worked really well together. They scored, 8 goals between them during the championship. Someone's going to replace that kind of output, but also fit into the style that whatever style Sinisha Kahajic wants to put up. Now, the style that we saw with Sinisha during the NPL was a lot more attacking, a bit more free-flowing, a lot more creative. When it came to the championship, it started to get a bit more pragmatic. So it'll be interesting to see what approach he takes as well, and how the squad looks like. In effect, at least the first 2 or 3 weeks of the Oceania Pro League for South Melbourne is going to take the place of what would have been pre-season friendlies. So, I mean, you have this concern that the club is going to be playing 50 to 60 games, proper games, in a year, which is insane for a fully professional club, let alone for a semi-professional club. These guys have jobs. They've got school. They've got family commitments. But at least in the early part of the season, in the January window, you would say at least these take place in terms of we would normally have pre-season friendlies. So again, this is really uncharted territory for this club, and possibly any Australian club, to be honest.
Well, South Melbourne often pride themselves and call themselves the biggest club in Australia, so it makes sense that they have the biggest schedule. Do you know what steps they're taking to not just prevent player fatigue, but also fan fatigue, and just maintain that interest and excitement?
Honestly, I have no idea, because it's been very quiet. Again, very little information has been provided to the fans. I mean, they've only just started really making the announcements of the signings. We saw all the signings first up because the Pro League put it up on the website. So we saw all the new signings and the squad list. I don't think they were meant to do that. So the link to the squads got taken down. Which is kind of funny. But obviously everyone saved the JPEG of the screenshot that somebody took. So we all know who all the players are. Now they're naming them one by one as we go through. The funny thing about this whole thing is that this is not even the first time that South Melbourne's gone overseas and tried something different like this. So in 2010 and 2011, we participated in the Singapore Cup as one of, I think, 4 invited teams. The Singapore in 2010, the Cup invited a team from Thailand. I think they invited a couple of teams from the region as well. And we were one of them. We put a hand up for this because, again, you're trying to break out of the rut, because NPL Victoria can be a real rut, VPL as it was then. And one of the challenges for the club was, apart from a congested schedule, this is obviously before FA Cup / Australia Cup comes in, was obviously working the schedule around. I mean, it was a straight knockout for the first round, but still, you've got to go over to Singapore. You've got to deal with the humidity. You've got to get people away from work, their work lives here. They've got to get time off. And sometimes that wasn't always possible. There were players that would miss either the first round, which we won, or the quarterfinals, which was just 2 legs, which was towards the end of the season in 2010. Realistically, a lot of soccer players in Australia take time off at semi-pro level. They structure their lives around the soccer season, and they get time off in, say, October, November. And now we're in a situation where Heidelberg last year played, 54 games or whatever it was, from January through to December, or February to December. It was ridiculous. Insane schedule. And now South Melbourne's going to be doing an even more intense version of that. Going to, again, really uncharted waters, even with the experience of a Singapore Cup, even with the experience of long campaigns starting from late January through to October for Australia Cup campaigns. We're all sitting here as South fans, at least the ones I talk to on a regular basis, wondering how they're going to pull this off.
Do you think that there's going to be pressure to either go to full-time contracts rather than semi-pro, or alternatively just have a bigger squad?
They're going to have a bigger squad. I suspect, again, we haven't been told how it's going to operate. I suspect there will be players that will be mostly playing Oceania Pro League, and there will be players that will be mostly playing NPL Victoria, at least for the first part of the season while Oceania Pro League is happening. I expect there will be players that will have crossover as well, but I don't expect you to have 2 squads. That's just impossible. You're not going to have a squad of 40. I think that's unlikely. You might have a squad capacity of 30, and you top up with youth team players when you need to be. But that's really risky to do that in the NPL, because you go on a bad run and you're struggling. And if you cop a few injuries as well, and that's one of the things that hurt South Melbourne a lot last season. Yes, the recruiting wasn't necessarily crash hot, but we copped some very serious injuries to very important players early in the season, and we just didn't have the backup. There's only so many youth team players that can step up and try to make the grade and try to fill the gaps in. And you've seen there's this idea that how can a massive club like, say, Melbourne Knights go down? My riposte to that would be there are no massive clubs. Everyone's ripe for relegation. All you need to do is stuff up one time, right? So this is a concern for, I think, a lot of South fans. How are we going to manage this? And all we can do is wait and see.
So at the moment, it sounds like fans, if it has a choice between doing well in the OFC Pro League and the Championship at the cost of being relegated in the NPL, that would be quite a heavy cost? Or would you say if you consistently do well in those leagues, and presumably the future home and away league, that maybe be worth the cost of South Melbourne possibly going down and becoming essentially a reserve team?
Well, this is the really interesting thing. When South Melbourne was bidding for the A-League, especially the most recent one, which it lost obviously to Western United and Macarthur, the plan was to field a youth/reserves team in the way that Melbourne Victory and Melbourne City do, and that Western United still do. And it wouldn't really matter then that they were playing 2nd or 3rd tier in Victorian soccer, because the senior team would be up at a high level. The issue is, no one really knows how long this OFC Pro League is actually going to last, whether it'll even last the whole season. I can guess if apparently it's got this sponsorship money, it'll be fine for 4 or 5 years or whatever it is. But on the same token, can't have a soccer club running where its main team plays 3 games in Melbourne as part of its season. That's not conducive to anything, really, to creating a culture. At the same time, doing well in NPL Victoria has got us nowhere, because we have done well in NPL Victoria. I mean, even with seasons where we haven't done well, we've flirted with relegation. We've still won 3 titles in 20 years. We've made 4 other grand finals. So we've been pretty competitive for most of the time, but the crowds just don't turn up for it. There's no interest. The Australian Championship show, there is some kind of core of 3,500 to 4,000 South Melbourne fans that will come out for big events. But we've kind of known that for a number of years, that they will come out for the big Australia Cup games. They will come out for the grand finals. It's getting them to come to the regular season NPL games, especially against non-brand name opponents. Right? I mean, it's fine to come against Preston and to a certain extent Heidelberg and, whoever's doing well that year. But with all due respect, when you play facing a club like Moreland or St Albans or whoever smaller clubs come through to Lakeside, there's just not the same interest. You're not getting 3,500, you might be getting a few hundred, if that. So there's a lot of risk in trying to spread not just the playing resources here, but also the fan resources. And if the bread and butter of the NPL is devalued to such an extent that why would I go? Why would other fans go if that's just going to be treated as a youth/reserve team? And if we're going to be putting all the eggs into one or two baskets, which is this start of season OPL, which we only get to see maybe 3 games, and an end of season Australian Championship, which, everyone hopes it becomes a fully fledged home and away league at some point. But the evidence for that seems to be that it's at least some time away.
So if you had a choice, you said that South Melbourne feels like they need to go somewhere. Would it be, if we say, okay, well, we having a bit of trouble finding the CEO of Football Australia, so we're going to put Paul Mavroudis in charge. Would South Melbourne be part of a home and away national second tier, or would they be part of the A-League with no $25 million license fee?
This is a really big issue that I think people are starting to cotton on at South Melbourne, at least among the fans now. I don't think they've ever really understood the economics of it, how much of a difference there is between playing NPL or as a state league club, and especially as a member-owned club. Even if a lot of the financing comes from certain board members and sponsors or whatever, the gap between funding an NPL team or a state league team and funding an A-League team is huge. People looked at, say, today we're having a discussion about Melbourne Victory's $5 million loss, which is an improvement on the $10 million loss they had the previous year. And people are like, how is that sustainable? And my answer is pretty clear. First, it's a kind of sporting philanthropy. Some people put money into the arts, some people put money into community organisations, and some people put it into sport. And nobody's making money out of this. So it must be a sort of kind of philanthropy. A bit of a selfish one, because your ego gets boosted if your team does well. I did that. It's my club. Me and my mates put the money in. We're responsible for all this. And that's no different to what the NSL was like as well. I mean, you get your photo in the paper and you look like a big shot in the community. But this is the kind of thing. We are so far off the pace, and the gap is getting bigger and bigger every year. So I guess you have to look at the model of the second tier, even without the sponsorship dollars and the TV dollars. That has to be the next port of call for South Melbourne and clubs like South Melbourne, because you need an intermediate step to see how much better you can be. This is the lesson of, I think, the first iteration of the Australian Championship, that there are clubs that can clearly do better than their respective state leagues. And that would include South Melbourne, that might include Preston, that might include RP and Marconi. They clearly have potential that can supersede what they can do in the state league. Are there enough of these clubs to actually fill out a full home and away second tier competition? That is the difficult question to answer. And my personal belief is it probably aren't. I'm happy to be proven wrong. Prove me wrong, clubs. Go ahead and do it. But as for making the step up to the A-League, as we are now without private investment, I don't see it happening. So hopefully the next step is a viable second-tier, fully fledged home and away competition, not just for South Melbourne, but also for the other clubs that are sort of in our position where we're kind of stuck. We're too big for one thing and not quite big enough for the biggest thing. And look, Australian soccer needs a second tier more so for anything for the players. It's ridiculous having 8 or 9 or 10 second divisions. Yeah, but naturally, most of the players are going to gravitate to Victoria, to Melbourne and Sydney. That's just a given. But if you still improve the playing cohort, there's a benefit there, a net benefit already. You need the best players playing against each other, even in the second tier, much more regular than they do now.
So obviously we've covered a lot of concerns or worries about the OFC Pro League as well as the future of the NST. But let's end on a positive. So if everything goes right for the OFC Pro League, what does that look like? What's the best case scenario for you as a fan?
When I first heard of it, I think like pretty much everybody else, it's like, this is insane. The travel, the commitment, the money required, because it's not just the South Melbourne situation, obviously. We could look at it through selfish eyes and from point of self-interest. Clearly the Pacific is in a situation where they need to up their game and have more regular football for its best players. So in the same way that we need there's the rationale for a fully fledged Australian home and away second tier for to improve clubs, to improve the lot of players. Clearly, this is a situation where Oceania as a whole is saying, well, we need to do something because otherwise all we get is a few national team games and occasional qualifiers for the World Club Championships, which will never be a New Zealand team. This is a chance for, obviously, the different islands, different clubs, different organisations there to, again, offer something better than what they can do now. And look, for me, I'm always very pessimistic about all these things. I really am. That's my reputation. That's on the blog, among South fans, among anybody that kind of listens to me for whatever reason. But I admire, in some respects, people that think that things can get better, even if I'm not convinced that they will. And this is, I guess, the thing you got to sort of try to hang your hat on. It's very easy in the position that we've been in for the last 20 years. And in a sense, it's an Australian soccer-wide problem anyway, that we, if things aren't going perfectly, then we just get very cynical, very pessimistic about things, and we don't think that things are going to get better. And yet there are always people who are putting the money where their mouth is, putting their time where they think it's going to be best spent, and actually giving something a go. Now, and for that I have respect, because if Australian soccer was run by people like me, nothing would get done. I mean, my motto, which pisses people off on Twitter, is I think we should just go back to purely state leagues. Abolish the A-League, abolish any idea of a national second tier. Let's go back to the 1960s and have purely state leagues. And if you want to have an end of season, Champions League style competition, that's great. Go back to being fully semi-pro, local derbies every week, and that's the way I would do it. But that's why I don't run Australian soccer. And that's why I don't run Australian soccer clubs. And that's why I won't be invited to run anything in Australian soccer. Because I'm an artist, you see, and a provocateur. I'm not equipped to do these things. The people who are equipped to do these things are the ones in charge. Whether they succeed or not is a different question. But they're the ones that are equipped to do it, not people like me. And I recognize that intimately. Because, again, first of all, I don't have the skill set. So asking me a question like, oh, what if you were the CEO? Well, I have no idea. I'm a theorist. I'm not a practicing soccer administrator. I'm just someone who thinks about the game. The people actually doing it could do with some theory and could do with some feedback. I'm not sure they ask for enough from people like myself, which is a very egotistical thing to say. But they're the people that actually make things happen. Now, we wait and see what actually is going to happen.
So thank you so much for that. We've got we need both opinions in the game. We need the dreamers who are and optimists who are going to push things forward, and we also need the pessimists and who will occasionally pour a bit of cold water. And without the optimists, nothing will get done. Without the pessimists, we get a lot of things done which we probably shouldn't. So we need all these opinions in our society. So we're very grateful for it. So whether you're a pessimist or optimist, please join us on the forum, greenandgoldfc.com, to give your opinions. I know I'm probably more in the optimist camp, so I'm expecting to see the next Harry Kewell get their debut during the OFC Pro League and hype up the next player, which I see. But of course, I understand that that's not the whole picture. So please join us on the forum, greenandgoldfc.com. We're also on Twitter, Spotify, and Apple. As well as YouTube. That's all we have time for this week. But until next time, it's bye for now.